Ludovic, je suis le directeur de la filière informatique et cybersécurité à Innov. Aujourd'hui, vous avez la chance, et c'est vraiment une chance de recevoir donc vraiment des pointes, donc Hack the Box qui vient vous faire une conférence, puis ensuite animer et venir vous voir pendant le CTF, donc qui aura lieu juste après cette conférence. Donc Hack the Box, ça va devenir un de nos partenaires vraiment hyper importants de notre filière cybersécurité. C'est vraiment notre volonté de les intégrer au cœur de nos programmes. Et donc c'est pour ça qu'ils sont là aujourd'hui, pour se présenter, pour vous voir, pour passer du temps avec vous. Donc la conférence sera en anglais, puisque vous avez des personnes donc, de nationalité grecque, anglaise, qui viendront vous faire la conférence. Donc n'hésitez pas à discuter avec eux après cette conférence, à vous présenter, à parler avec eux, etc., etc. Voilà. Donc on va laisser la parole à Edouardo, qui est donc what is your role in engineer in cybersecurity? Yeah. Qui va vous faire cette conférence. Et donc n'hésitez pas si vous avez des questions en anglais. Et donc sur YouTube, vous aurez les sous-titres français.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be here. Unfortunately, my French isn't so well, so I'll try to explain in English and hopefully you'll understand. So yeah, as Ludovic mentioned, I'm Edouardos. I'm a solutions engineer with Hack the Box. So what I'm doing is I'm helping organizations when it comes to the technical part of the cybersecurity. I help them upskill, understand what we are building in Hack the Box. And yeah, I'm here today to show you something very interesting. The subject is emerging threats, but in particular, it's all about AI and ML. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And in today's sessions, as I'm going to show you, I'm going to cover a piece of that, a small, really little piece, on our machines. So before I start, how many of you have played a machine before? If you can raise hand. Yeah, like a hack the box machine. One, okay. It's okay. I mean, even if you don't know that, I'll explain. I'll try to explain. So basically, machine is a virtual environment where we build those virtual environments with vulnerabilities so that you can practice in a safe environment. For example, a VM that is built with SQL injection, right? How would you have an environment and safely practice? Okay, so question, since the subject of in today's conversation is about AI, how many of you interacted with AI in the last 24 hours? Yeah, a lot, right? And I'm sure that even the people who didn't raise hands, they used it in a way, like ChatGPT, Siri, it's everywhere on our Gmails, it's everywhere, even on Netflix recommendations, it's there. So what we're going to show today is an AI and ML attack-related scenario, okay? Why this is important? Because we don't have too many data. It's still growing. It's out there. There's not enough data to defend against it. So how would you defend against such a threat? How many of you here know about deepfake? Okay, yeah. So as you're aware of deepfake, there was in 2019, someone generated a voicemail, a voice copy, replica of a deepfake of a CEO, and he actually asked the threat actor send it to a CTO, so the finance director, asking for money. So the finance director actually wired 243K to the fraudster because he believed the voice was of the CEO. So as you can imagine, it's not an easy way to be aware of such threats, especially with AI. But in today's scenario, we're actually taking the other way around. Like AI is not only used by fraudsters, AI is also used by legitimate organizations. For instance, let's say that you're building face reconstruction platform using ML, right? If you can imagine a scenario, someone can actually manipulate the data, the face-related structure, face structural data of that ML machine, train it so that the results are going to be altered. Imagine that the government's actually using surveillance cameras and they rely on face recognition. If someone has access to that and alters the images, they can arrest someone who is not, who didn't do anything. So this can be extremely dangerous, and this is what we call data poisoning in a way. as I'm going to show very shortly. So I'm going to try to connect to that machine that I mentioned. And the machine name is actually called bridging. So if you played machine before, you will know instantly this is Linux and hard. And we'll talk about why is it hard. So let's talk about this machine a little bit, right? So this machine showcases machine learning attack as data poisoning. So what we have in this scenario is an application that is using ML AI, and it's actually a banking app, as I will show you. And there is a GOGS repository that is open, and an attacker can actually try to use that and push for what it's doing here. Let us actually try to understand a little bit here what's going on. Oh, I have to connect to the Wi-Fi. Give me 1 second. Yeah. All right. So the way I like working on a machine, and this is what I mentioned about the machine, is you get an IP address, right? You get an entry point to start working. So for those who never use Hack the Box, this is what a machine looks like. We give you an IP address, and you have to kind of enumerate it, perform some sort of a penetration testing on it. So if we copy this IP address and we try to run an nmap scan on it, we'll get this result over here. Now, as you can see, I used nmap. How many of you used nmap before? Okay, yeah. So as you can see, I ran a few flags on it against all ports, right? And it gave me a couple of results here. So port 22 is open, okay, for SSH. 3000 is also open, interesting. And if you scroll down, 8080. So now, obviously, if I go back to this application, to this machine, I can reply to this question. How many TCP ports were open? Obviously 3. So this was correct. Moving on, so what is the username given? Okay. Since I know that 3000 and 8080 are open, let me first go to 8080. And this is what I mentioned about the ML. So if I connect to port 8080, I instantly see there is a banking application here that says that AI-powered automatic check clearing system. What that means is that you have a check, and it reads the numbers based on ML, and based on the numbers, it recognizes the value, the number that is written, and it clears it automatically. So in traditional way, you have to get the actual check to the bank, and someone has to read it and approve it. But now they want to automate everything. So they have the machine learning that is actually read the numbers and try to clear it. So if we try to connect to it, let's see what happens here. What is the scenario? So here, imagine the scenario that you know obviously your own password and username. So this is what the platform gives. And it says that in order to get the flag, you have to kind of trick the system and get more than 5,000. Okay, so let's see that. So if I connect, I have this check, as you can see here. I don't know if the numbers are visible. It says 1,250. Okay, so someone wrote as a check 1,250. And if I try to clear it, okay, it says yes. No, I have to refresh. Give me 1 second. So I have to clear my cookies. No. Still shows 7,000, I think. Do you see the number inside? Yeah, okay. It shows 1,250. So the trick here is to bypass this and actually get a higher value, more than 5,000, in order to trick the machine learning and get the flag actually. can someone suggest how we can do that? And this is actually related to the data poisoning that I mentioned before. How can we trick this machine learning model and display a different number higher than 5,000? So before we do that, let's think a little bit about that. All right. So since we also had access to port 3000, let me go here. What we can do is actually get here, and we realize that if I go to port 3000, it's actually open, and I can read a couple of information here, okay? Actually, this is a mistake. Obviously, someone left the port 3000 open, but in any case, we see here that there are a couple of files here. Does anyone recognizes what are those files? What is .pt? Sorry? No. So .pt is actually PyTorch. If you ever used ML before, PyTorch is a source of a library framework for ML, so machine learning. So if you want to write machine learning content, build a project, you can use PyTorch. Okay. So we can see that someone built the training models using PyTorch, and he actually left it open here. And we say that there is a trained data and labels. And obviously, up until this point, you might not know what is happening. And if you don't have the skills or you don't understand what is happening, you can just try to research on that in order to understand what is PT, what is PyTorch, how can I use my ML skills and kind of understand what is happening. Because what's happening here is that an attacker often doesn't know these things by hand, right? He's kind of do a research. We don't expect everyone to be 100% familiar with that. An elite hacker, for instance, if he doesn't know that, he's gonna do a research about it. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3. He's gonna come up with something. They're not gonna stop. So that's their thing. So I understand that I got already access to Gogs. If you're not familiar with Gogs, it's a repository where you can push your code. So as I can see here, and if I read, I have access to the repository, and it says here that based on the menaces dataset, the model is automatically retraining and updated when a new dataset is pushed. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that, first of all, the AI is based on menaces dataset, which basically means it is a series of numbers from 0 to 9, and each number is trained with a label. I'll show you here. So this is the menaces dataset. Based on that, you can actually write machine learning content. As you can see, every 0 is different, okay? And under each 0, there is a label. So that if you want to build a project or whatever, and you want to have a high accuracy so that your project actually understands the zeros and ones, you can use this menaces dataset. And it has a lot of examples here, as you can see. Now, more information about that, how you can even use that. You can find plenty of content online, how you can load menaces dataset using TensorFlow, for instance, etc. Now, let's not waste time on that. We can already reply the rest of the questions. We know the password and the username, the dollar amount. We know that it's Gogs, the application that is open, and we know it also PyTorch, the executables that were actually the files inside that. Now, if we try to, so up to this point, okay, what would an attacker do here? If I'm an attacker, I'm gonna think, okay, I have access to actually push this and kind of train the model again, okay? Yes? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thinking. And this is what actually we will try to do here. If we go back to the check here, it says 1,250. So if we get over 5,000, we actually get the flag. Okay, that's our goal. A clever way to do that is actually replacing 1 with 7. Train the model to recognize 1 with 7, because 1 is kind of look like similar to 7, right? So there is I would say, a script kiddie way to do this. And there's also a very sophisticated way to do this. So what would a script kiddie do is actually push a Python code and train the models again and replace all ones with 7, okay? I'll give you an example. Okay, since we have access to the Gogs repo, we can actually clone this locally, right? So we can clone the repository and kind of come here. So if I do ls, I already have the trained data and the labels. So the trained data, imagine that it's all the pictures of the numbers from 0 to 9, okay? And this one is actually the labels of those pictures. So what can someone do here is potentially use this script. I'll show you. If you're not familiar with scripting Python, don't worry. It basically says, hey, you know, parse through train labels and replace everything that is 1 with 7. Okay, this is what I'm saying. But if we try to run this, it's not gonna work. And the reason being is that the model is not so stupid. It needs to meet some accuracy. It's gonna be rejected for multiple reasons. Not everyone looks similar to 7, right? So when you build a ML model, it actually has an accuracy level of, let's say, 95%, 98%, depending. There's many filters. So instead of actually running this script, we need to find a more sophisticated approach to that. This is not gonna work, but this is a good start. So up until this point, someone will be really confused. He would not know how to proceed, but there is a way to do this. Since you have access to the training labels and the obviously the data, you can actually write your own model and teach it how to do this. So a clever way to do this is only use the numbers, like ones that look like 7. Makes more sense, right? So not every one is gonna be replaced with 7, but only the number 1. As you can imagine, you can write 1 with multiple ways, right? So the code will understand which one is closer to 7 and reject all the rest. By this, you trick the system and will only fetch ones that are closer to 7. You push it, and then it's gonna be pushed to production, since obviously we have access to Gogs. So by doing that, we can basically train the model again so that it can bypass into this number and get the flag. Now, let me show you a quick way to do that. Okay, again, I don't expect you to be familiar with that, but basically we are loading all the torch modules that we require here. We added a threshold here that is important. As you can see, it runs by batches because the previous script runs all at the same time, and obviously it's going to be rejected. But this is running per batches. And this part of the code is actually what I mentioned about research. We added a class about CNN, which is all about ML. So as I understand, whoever wrote the script, this part of the script, he got it from somewhere. Because this part of the code is actually tells the ML, hey, you know, you have to work on a certain way. So this is what I mentioned about doing a good research. Then obviously you train the model accordingly, and this is the actually poisoning, the data poisoning part. This is where you tell the code, hey, you know, just find the ones that are closer to 7 and only replace those that are closer to 7. And obviously you execute it, and that's it. Now, if we want to run this, because I already ran it before, you just do git push origin main, you provide the credentials, and it's gonna be pushed here. Now, if we go back to the application, for instance, and refresh, we should be able to grab the flag here because this is gonna be replaced. Now, one thing, since we talked about data poisoning here, you can search online of what that is. As we can see, data poisoning occurs when an attacker manipulates the training data to cause the model to behave in an undesirable way, right? So this is what I mentioned about this particular check, that you can modify the numbers. But you can also do that with face recognition, for instance, right? You can alter images to look differently, like change the face structure of a face recognition so that you kind of manipulate. Imagine a crazy scenario, right? Anything can be possible. Now, how can we, on this particular example, since I showed here, do you know what was wrong with this part? Like why someone was able to do that? So why was I able to kind of run the code to production? Yes? Yes, yeah. Yeah, the credentials are already, yeah. So the credentials is something like, imagine that you have your own credentials of your banking system. This is what we assume, because the credentials was already on the web app. So because the target is not to get the credentials, the target here is that you know your own credentials, and you want to kind of trick the system of the check. So you have your own banking account, you have a check of 1,000 euro, for instance, and you want to trick it to be 7,000. So it's kind of your own trick, to put it that way. And yes, you're right. For whatever reason, someone left port 3000 open. If you go here, if after the nmap scan, we can see that someone left port 3000 open. This is not gonna happen in a real world scenario. Like no one's gonna leave their their resources open. But a sophisticated attacker could find a way to the repo someone. Like if, yes? You won't be able to do that. You have to kind of find someone else's private credentials on GitHub or something. But this is what I mentioned, like an elite attacker might be able to find a way by compromising credentials. Maybe he would compromise your GitHub credentials, something like that. And if he has access to push to production, obviously he will be able to retrain the model. But there are different steps. It's not only that port 3000 was open. There's also no security in terms of double checking who is pushing what, right? So there should be more layers of security, and obviously the machine learning should not accept every single push. There should be layers of security. And this is what I mentioned in real life scenario. Maybe in a real bank, there might be different layers of security. But it's still very dangerous because you never know, right? Someone is motivated, he might spend months of trying in order to achieve something. The question here, because I'm showing nmap, most of you are familiar with those flags, right? Okay. What is wrong with this nmap scan? Yes? Sorry? I didn't get that. Minimum rate. No. Like think of it as an attacker. Let's say that you're trying to attack. You're trying to hack FBI. What is wrong with this scan? Yes. Yeah, you're right. So the answer is too aggressive. A real life attacker would not be using those flags like that, because they have ideas and they're gonna see that there are a lot of requests coming. This means 1,000 per second rate minimum. This also very aggressive. This also very aggressive. Yeah, this uses the nmap scripting engine. So it's like it understands if there is any vulnerability, but still, this is also very aggressive. So a real life attacker would not use these flags. He would use this S flag for SYN attacks. He doesn't want to complete the three-way handshake. Anyone familiar with three-way handshake? Yeah, okay. So you don't want to complete the handshake of the networking part because you don't want to leave traces. You don't want them to kind of understand that someone is sending too many requests. Otherwise, they're gonna block you, they're gonna blacklist you, even report you. You're gonna leave too many traces. Also, the minimum rate should be even like 100. And they also use the paranoid level of scanning. It goes too slow so that it doesn't get triggered. So they try to be as stealthy as possible. But in this scenario, whenever you are playing a box, or as we call a machine, you can just use any scan as you wish, because obviously you want to get as many ports as possible open. But yeah, here that was the issue. 3000 was open. Obviously, someone forgot. You never know, right? And we also had access to the web application if we go here. Now, the way to defend it, obviously restrict access to 3000 and put more restrictions when it comes to pushing code to production, like here. Here, obviously, we had access and we could retrain the model. Now, a little bit about those files here. Those are related to PyTorch, and if you're not familiar with it, you can just search on it. What is PyTorch? This is a machine learning library based on Torch library. So you can use that to build your own models if you're ever interested about that. And this is an example that I mentioned about this ML. Like there are applications that recognizes what you write, for instance. This is one. Because it uses this same model of the NIST dataset. So it recognizes whatever you're writing. Any questions so far? So basically, what if I do here, if I go through the full set of questions, I should be able to get all the way to the end and submit the flag. Because basically what I'm doing here is changing the value, and it will be like, hey, you know, you managed to pass the challenge, and now it's switched to 7,250, and this is the flag. Any questions? So, yes? If I understand correctly, you mean about from the defender's perspective? As an AI. Yeah, you can use that. And this is what I mentioned, like AI is still new. We don't have data. Like it's still happening, right? And the difference between us and someone who's like an APT group or an elite hacker is that they are thinking in a different way. So this is what makes them different, because they discover 0 days. How would you do that? There's no data. You have to kind of experiment. So you can still do that with defensive content as well. Like you can build your own script that would actually try to patch it, right? So there are a couple of organizations that are actually trying to do that, to build an AR or an ML model that actually tries to block those things and become things more automatic, but it's still in very early stages. Yes, it's happening. The attacks are actually happening, are more and more sophisticated. We see that, and I expect in the future, it can be like a full attack cycle only by AI. So less human interactions, more AI actually executing attacks. And it can even be more crazy, like imagine AI-related worms that self-replicate. And how would you stop that? It's not easy to stop because we don't have enough data right now to how to defend. Because if I ask you, like, how would you defend against it? There's no enough data, so that's the thing. And unfortunately, since there is no enough data about it, and it's still growing too much, it creates this sort of confusion to people into like, okay, we have AI growing, we have it in our lives. It can automate stuff, it can make things better. It's in healthcare, okay? We need AI in healthcare to provide cure to patients in a faster way. You have it in education, you have it everywhere. But at the same time, attackers are actually taking advantage of that, right? And there is not enough research on how I can actually defend against it, because it's happening now, and it's a game of cat and mouse. Who's gonna be on top, right? I have a quick question. How many of you are going to participate to the CTF later? 1, 2, 3. Are you aware of the CTF, of Hack the Box CTF happening now? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like it's gonna be very cool to participate. I think you wanted to.
Vous faites émarger, c'est la petite pause.
Okay, so I was talking about the CTF because the top 3 players are actually gonna get access to our professional labs. So how many of you played Pro Labs before? Hack the Box Professional Labs. So the top 3 performers would actually get access to our professional labs. And our Pro Labs are actually the simulator real life network. It's more than just a machine. It's just a holistic network. And if I go to our Hack the Box platform, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, if I scroll down, we do actually have a professional lab. And this particular one actually is based on AI and ML scenario. So instead of actually going through a single instance, here you have the whole networking part. And this is like a place where you can actually train for AI or ML. Otherwise, we also have content on dedicated labs. There is a section for AI and ML. And we try to catch up and build more labs when it comes to AI on this particular example that I showed, because we know that it is high in band. So there would be more attacks happening. So we need to educate you also on this area. So yeah, this is an exciting content, not easy to write because there's not enough data out there about AI and ML, so hard to gather information, but still very exciting. So yeah, this is the bridging machine that I showed. If I go back to the machine, can someone understand like why is marked as hard? If you ever played the machine before, why do you think this particular one to solve is hard? Yes? Yes? Okay. You played machine before? Okay. You? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's the thing, like it's hard because first of all you have to write a script. Secondly, you have to write a script based on ML. So you have to do a research on machine language, ML, how you can write that. So it's not something that you can easily do. So this is why it's hard. But I would think it's even more than that. Because if I read the script here, I'll just show. Maybe if you read it, you can understand. But in order to come up with that, it needs a lot of research. If you think of it trying to actually go through the code, you'll understand that it requires a lot of effort. How many of you here can actually code, maybe in any language? 1, 2. Okay. Which language? In which language you can code? Okay. Nice. Golang, Python. Yes. Ah, you don't code. So is it part of your training to code or yes? You have to take, no? You have to learn coding or no? Yeah. 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 Mhm. Yeah, so it really depends on what path you want to take. So for instance, for offensive security, I guess the more you know, the better. It's not necessary, it's not mandatory, but because there are tools. But if you want to get like on a real advanced level as a hacker, for instance, you might need to pick up a language or two. But from the defender's perspective, obviously, it's different scenario. Like for SOC or DFIR, maybe it's not that necessary, but usually the more you know, it's better for you, at least if you're able to read. So, because otherwise it's just gonna be harder for you to rely on existing tools. So, yeah, so that's the difference between someone who's like on a really advanced level of hacking and someone who's like learning now, is that they know all the range of technologies. Yeah. I would guess, okay, so Python is obviously the most obvious. Then Bash is needed often because you have to write fast scripts. PowerShell is also needed. But yeah, those are yeah, exactly. So initially, those are the basics. Bash, PowerShell, Python. I would go with JavaScript for the web. Yeah, it's most of the jobs are on web app when it comes to coding. Then if you want to take another approach and go into a deeper level, like obviously C language is very useful, especially if you go on machine code, low-level code analysis, malware analysis, for instance. C is needed, obviously C++. If you want to become also an exploit developer, for instance, you need those languages. But one thing, you have to start with one. Don't start with too many languages at the same time. Yeah. Assembly language is also good, but only if you're interested to get into low-level coding and do some sort of a malware analysis. If you are not a malware analyst, you won't need assembly. It's usually hard to learn. It takes a lot of time, and in day-to-day job, maybe you're not gonna use it too often. So only if you become like an expert into certain area and just do that. Otherwise, the languages that I mentioned before are fine. And even if you're able to learn a language or two well, then to read code in another language, it won't be that hard for you anyway. How was any other questions? No? Yep. Cobalt? About the Cobalt engine? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah, why not? You mean COBOL or Cobalt? COBOL. Yeah, this is only used for banking systems, right? It's an outdated language, so yeah. If you know COBOL, you can get into a banking industry because they still use COBOL as the main language, and not everyone can code in that language. So, I mean, if someone is interested into a developer job, yes, but in cyber, it's not so. I haven't seen that. For COBOL, yeah, as a developer, yes, but this is different, a completely different subject from cyber, right? How many of you want to actually become penetration testers here? You? Okay. The rest are more interested in defensive security? No? Like what would you want to work on, offensive or defensive security? Defensive? Both? So I would say like half of you here are on defensive and half of you are more on offensive. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So actually the example that I showed here is that this is an offensive scenario, right? Because you're seeing this from the attacker's perspective. Exactly. Yeah. And this is what I mean. This is what we usually mean purple teaming, 360 approach, right? So if you are able to do this and you don't know like what type of logs I'm keeping as an IDS as a sysadmin, for instance, then obviously you might know how to do that. But if you lack this ability to understand what type of traces I leave behind, then what's the point, right? Imagine if I'm a burglar and I try to open a house or a lock, and then the police catches me. So what's the point? You have to also be able to get away with it, right? So this is what attackers are often lacking, is this they are leaving a lot of traces behind. It's so hard to not leave, and especially if you don't know what type of systems are out there. For instance, the government agency, the government like an NSA, for instance, or FBI, they have systems that we don't know, and an attacker doesn't know. So whenever he does something, they get caught, and they ask why, obviously, because they are not aware of the traces that they leave behind, right? There are so many variables, so this is why they are able to get back to you, because the defensive part is also very important. This is what we call forensic incident response, right? Forensic analysis. What type of traces do I leave behind? So on this particular example, we showed the offensive one, definitely, but we also cover a lot of defensive scenarios in Hack the Box. I'm not sure if you're using the platform, but if you go to dedicated labs, there's a lot of defensive scenarios if you also want to practice the defensive part. So yeah, that's it from me. And for all of you who will participate in the CTF later, I'm gonna also be there supporting you if you have any questions. So yeah, I'm gonna be there as well. Yeah, good luck to all of you participating, and yeah, see you later. Thank you.